Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. Right now you're hearing some music I made with my Rhythm Drums sample pack. Rhythm Drums is a collection of 1,155 drum samples I made with the analog rhythm by Electron. Basically, I sent some randomized parameters to the synthesizer engines on the analog rhythm and sampled 1,155 drums. I used all the different synth engines. There's kicks, there's snares, toms, hi-hats, rims, but a lot of them are kind of outside of the norm of those sounds because of the randomization stuff. So there's a lot of really interesting and weird sounds, as well as your more traditional sounds. The analog rhythm gets a great low end and lots of power in the drums, and I'm really happy with how this sample pack came out. The sample pack is available to all members of my Music Production Club, which is a monthly subscription that gets you new stuff in your inbox all the time, as well as lots of other goodies right when you join. And you can also get this for sale at my store. If you head over to brianfunk.com, you can learn more about it and maybe use them in your next project. Today's episode of the podcast is called Quantity Leads to Quality. And that is the philosophy I have that the more stuff you make, the better that stuff will come out. So the more you keep on creating and going through the process, the better you'll get at it. And I like to focus on things that you can control in your music making. And one of the things you can control is how much music you make. It's hard to control the quality as much by just showing up and hoping that you get better quality music. But if you just keep at it, it will eventually get better. And I bring this all up, it might seem obvious, but I'm going through the January 2021 challenge. Now, I did a podcast on this, episode 197, if you want to learn all about it in detail, but I'll give you the short of it. Basically, the challenge is every day during the month of January, create some new piece of music and post it online. It's very loose and open. The idea is like really just creating a jam. So this might be you just playing your instrument. It might be experimenting with new gear. It might be trying to write songs. Whatever it is, you do it every day and you post it, and it gets you used to a disciplined habit of showing up every day or as much as you can and putting it online every day and getting used to putting stuff on the internet that you've done. A lot of artists have trouble sharing their work because it's scary. You don't know what people are going to say. But under the guise of January, it's understood that you are just producing things each day and there's no real expectation on the quality. So it kind of frees you from that feeling of being worried about what people are going to think. You know, it's just your day's worth of work that you share. And however good that is, is really irrelevant. It's more that you're doing the exercise. So I've now completed 16 days in a row of January. And I got to tell you, it feels great. First of all, I should tell you, it is not too late for you to join. Who cares if you've missed the first half of the month? Think of just what you would get done in 15 more days of doing music every single day. 2 weeks, really. Can you do that? I think you can. And after the end of 2 weeks, you will have gone through this process 15 times and you'll be like 15 times better. You'll get all that practice. So I highly encourage you to jump in. It's never too late to start. And that should be with everything you do, especially around your music making. Don't ever feel like you're too late to the party. So what? Just jump in. Have fun. No one knows and no one cares, really. And it's going to help you out quite a lot. So I do want to point out, number one, I'd be a liar if I said it was easy to do this. I think that probably there've only been like about 3 or 4 days where I felt like really ready and eager to go. Every other day has been a little bit of a struggle to get started, and very often I wait till a little bit too late to get going. It's not easy to get started. It's a very mentally taxing process to make music, to start from scratch especially, come up with something and know that you're going to actually try to share it when you're done with it. But I must say, every time I've gotten started and every time I get going, because I love making music, it gets fun really quickly. Something happens that gets me excited. I've been able to get myself started using a couple different tricks. One is to just listen to some music that inspires me. And then as soon as I get that kind of jolt, which I almost always get at some point when I listen to stuff, that's when I stop listening and get to work, and I should get down to my studio and start making some music. Sometimes I'm emulating things I heard, or sometimes I'm just riding on that sort of buzz you get when you hear something that makes you want to create. I've also just told myself I'm going to just give myself an hour to do this. And that's been kind of helpful too, because there's an end in sight. You know that you're going to be done soon. And another thing that's been helpful is just the joy of exploring gear or new ideas I want to explore musically. And I'll get into some of that stuff in a few minutes that might help you get started if you haven't already, or give you some ideas on the way through the rest of your journey. The nice thing about doing something every day is it doesn't matter if you have a throwaway day, because you're going to show up tomorrow. And I've had some days where I knew I didn't have a lot in me, and I maybe tried to take the easy way out. And for me, a lot of times that's sending like a couple sequences through a synthesizer, adding some effects and making a little ambient type of thing out of it. Now, the cool thing about even those days is I sort of wind up getting inside some sort of interesting experiment and playing around with things and taking chances, because I know that I'm going to come back tomorrow and there's no expectation for it to be great. When you have the pressure on yourself to make something amazing, you're going to play it safe. You're going to do things that you think are going to be reliable, and you might come out with something in the end that's nice, but you might also be kind of I don't know, boring, I guess is the word I'm thinking. You're not going to be as adventurous. When I'm doing this every single day in a row, I try crazy things out, and I have quite a lot of fun doing it. And it's really brought back this kind of joy I remember feeling when I first started recording music, when I first got like a 4-track tape recorder, and it was just such a thrill to try new things, to see what I can do and push the limits of what I was capable of. And I'm feeling that again, and it's very exciting. And that feeling is very helpful in motivating myself to get going. So I don't know what it's going to be like today when I have to make my jam, but I know like the last 2 or 3 nights, I felt very excited. And it was because I have this kind of refound explorer's mindset where I'm just very thrilled to see what's possible. And I've got a lot of things I want to try out and experiments I want to do. So this has been a great way to just focus on each one of those one at a time. Sometimes when you're making just one track over a long period of time, maybe if you're not playing it safe, you try to make that the song that does everything. It's like you're using this one song to satisfy all of your musical curiosities. And the irony of doing that is when you put everything into one song, it's almost like the song is nothing. It has no definition. There's no defined characteristic to it. A lot of my favorite songs are the songs that have one special thing about them, one memorable idea. A Day in the Life by the Beatles has that crazy orchestral riser, like the first riser ever maybe. And it switches from one song to the next through that. And that's a really cool idea that song has. It makes it stand out. So I've found I've been able to really focus on little experimentations within these songs, and they wind up coming out with like a lot of character. Now, I've found that all of this is really helping me with my own self-doubt and indecision. It's a big part that comes into making music. You start doing something, and even if you're really psyched about it, eventually your mind works its way into the picture. You start thinking, and you realize you're not as good as the greats. You're not as good as the people that came before you. And, even if you are, you're just comparing yourself to someone else. And it's a very unhealthy thought. By dealing with that every single day, I'm finding that once those thoughts come up, I kind of see it, and I'm like, oh, it's you again. That thought of self-doubt. And I say, well, it doesn't matter now because I'm doing January and the quality is not an issue. It's the quantity that's really the thing. So I can kind of like throw that self-doubt away. And the irony comes up a lot, I feel like, in this process. But the surprising thing is that you just get more comfortable with it. You see it and you keep going, and self-doubt just sort of starts to go away a little more naturally. Now, I don't think I've conquered it, and I don't think you ever do. That's part of it, and it's part of what makes you push yourself and part of what makes you grow as an artist. But it can also be very destructive when you're making too many comparisons with other artists or other people. This process is very nice and just kind of throwing it out the window because it's not the point. And as far as indecision goes, which is another major issue I tend to have with making music, I think a lot of people as well, because there's so many options, right? And you can always leave things as they are and tweak them later. By making this a thing you're trying to complete every day, you just have to make decisions. And that's really what music making is. It's making decisions, committing, and moving forward. So I find myself doing weird things to my sounds, and then I'm moving on and I'm on to the next thing, and I don't look back. And that really informs what the next sound is going to be, what the next layer is, or what the next addition to my music is going to be, because I have to make it fit with the thing I've already committed to. It's a great practice in committing early and committing often. I'm really finding that if I commit to something, I can kind of like MacGyver my way into making it interesting somehow. And you start to discover all kinds of techniques and things that you enjoy in music and production that you can do that can take even an idea that maybe not might at first, thrill you, but you can start taking those ideas and dressing them up and altering them to make them into interesting things. So it's a really good exercise in working fast, moving forward, and taking chances and taking risks. I'll tell you some of the experiments I've been doing, and I'll give you some musical examples too, just so you can hear what's been going on. I've got 16 new tracks now because of January, and they're in various stages of completion. And I don't think any of them are necessarily complete, but some of them are getting pretty close just in one shot. I've really kind of figured out that if I can get a track down, as much of it as possible in the first sitting, I'm so much more likely to finish it because I've sort of like defined what it is. That's kind of what I'm trying to do in these jams, is to define what it is I'm working on so that when I do eventually go to finish it, and that'll be in February, finish February 2021, which we'll talk about soon on the podcast. We did it last year as well. But when I'm ready to finish things, I've already got the picture of what it's supposed to be. I have the idea. I know the vibe. A lot of the stuff that I make that gets unfinished and just sticks around on my hard drive are the stuff that never really got defined, never got the sound, never got the direction or the arrangement. For me, I'm really finding that getting vocals on things as early as possible seems to help define it and take it to where I want it to go. It might be different for you depending on what kind of music you make, but this is what's been helping me. And part of that is because of this experiment I'm trying to pursue. I'm trying to pursue a certain sound I sort of have in my head that is sort of like, it's like the psychedelic singer-songwriter. I love psychedelic sounding music, weird sounds, lo-fi sounds, warped kind of stuff that sounds kind of old or like has a interesting vibe to just the recording of it. So I've got this sort of like psychedelic rock singer-songwriter thing, and I sort of want it to sound like it's in a cassette tape boombox that is playing as like volcanic lava slowly submerges it. So it's definitely like very distorted, compressed, and aggressive sounding a lot of times, but it's sometimes very soft and sweet too. And it's been fun to just experiment with this and try similar things out on each track. For instance, I'm going nuts with a lot of distortion and compression, stuff like almost to the point that is wrong. And honestly, a lot of the tracks I've made over this, I've broken so many rules just to see what it would sound like. And it kind of thrills me. But I also know that it's like this kind of technique I'm using to sort of hide behind. When I start like destroying my recordings, as I love to do, I'm realizing like part of it is like out of insecurity about my playing or my singing, and I go back and forth between feeling like really happy with like my abilities and then the next day I feel like I don't even know what I'm doing. How is it that I've been doing music this long and I still suck this bad? That's the self-doubt, I guess, that comes in. One of my buddies, though, I was talking to him about this idea. I love these sounds, these psychedelic lo-fi type of things. But I was telling him, like, I think I'm like hiding behind it a little bit too. I'm kind of disguising my own insecurities, I guess, about my sound. And he just said something so simple that made me laugh, but it's true. He's like, well, we're not Michael Jackson here. We're not Van Halen. We're not any virtuoso of music, And it was kind of a relief to hear that. I mean, I've never ever considered myself on the level of any of those people, right? And don't even consider it possible to get there at this point. That's just something else. The greatest of the greats, really, we're talking about. But it's nice to just have it in perspective, like, that's just not what I'm shooting for anyway. And it's not even the kind of slick music I want to make, but having this understanding that, like, it's okay to kind of use some tricks and to hide behind things a little bit, because I'm not trying to be those people. I'm not trying to claim to be any kind of virtuoso at anything. It's more about expressing in the song and the textures and the vibe and the feeling. That's what I'm more interested in, is where the music takes you, the ride of it. And by pursuing this particular sound, I really do feel like it has this kind of world, this immersive thing. And it's been a lot of fun. So one of the techniques I've been thinking about that kind of fits into this that I wanted to try out was recording my guitar parts, usually an acoustic guitar part, in a very lo-fi way, throwing that into my Ableton Live session and experimenting over that. So it almost sounds like there's this, kind of distant or very intimate recording that's not perfect, that everything is built off of. And I did this 2 different times. I'm going to let you hear a little bit of each now. The first one here is one I did with my iPhone. So I was actually trying to cook dinner at the time, so I knew I had to make my January soon. So I grabbed my guitar and just tried to fumble out some chords and a little bit of a vocal melody as dinner was cooking, and recorded it on my iPhone. All the while, my wife is in the background having a meeting on Zoom, I think, talking in the other room in the distance, and you can hear the conversation a little bit on that recording in the background. And it just puts the song, the sound, in a place. And from there, I added onto it, and I'm really happy with how it came out. I think it's really a cool track. It's, it's not finished yet, but it's a great starting point for me when I go to finish things. And when you listen, pay attention to those background noises. The other experiment of this song was to do some like kind of unusual chord changes and key changes and to see if I can make them work. And I wasn't sure if they would work at first, but after going through the process, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So I hope you enjoy it. This is day 4. So, in a similar vein, I did something like this on the 8th day. But this time, instead of using my iPhone, which is really not a bad recording device in a pinch, it's much better, as I always tell my students, it's much better to get the recording on your iPhone than to not get it because you're being a recording snob because you don't have your fancy recording equipment with you. I know that if I didn't record that on my phone at that moment while dinner was cooking, I would have missed the idea and it never would have happened. I wouldn't have remembered it after cooking dinner and eating it. You know, it would have been long lost. But by doing it and getting it, now I had that interesting texture of that acoustic guitar and all that background noise. So on day 8, I did something very similar, except this time I used a micro cassette recorder, which is about as lo-fi as I can imagine getting. And I just recorded the guitar part on there real loose. You know, I didn't have a click just like the other one, no metronome or anything. And again, I just built the track off of it. Once again, I experimented with some unusual chord changes and no drums. I wanted the bass to actually be kind of like the most rhythmic thing, and that's I think worked out pretty well. And laying some vocals on top. They're not totally finished yet. I like the blabber technique of vocals where I just kind of say gibberish. Sometimes words come out and play around with it if I can come up with something, but it gives me an idea of the melodies. It gives me an idea of where the consonants and the vowels are and the movements and the rhythms of the words. And then often I wind up saying something in my, like, that sort of pops out of the subconscious that can be used to then frame the rest of the lyrics around. But this is day 8 with a micro cassette guitar recording at its base and everything added on top.
Down the stairs, can't wait to run. Turn a corner left, stop, see the sun. Wide-eyed alone, at the age of 10. Down the street, we keep our lights on. We wonder where we'll find the right song. You
So that one is definitely a relative of the one before it. And that's good because if I'm looking to making some sort of project in February, an EP or an album, I've got some sort of consistency going on now. Again, not finished, still working on it, but I'm happy with the direction it's going in. Now, I've also found myself having a lot of fun with playing around with certain features of gear I have that I haven't really played with yet. And just recently, Sequential made an update to the Prophet 6. I love the Prophet 6. Such a great synth. It's analog polyphonic based on the classic Prophets from the late 70s, early 80s. And they've added Not only did they add MIDI polyphonic expression capabilities to it, but they've taken the vintage knob from the new version of the Prophet 5 and added it to the Prophet 6. And what the vintage knob does is it makes everything a little less reliable. The oscillators aren't quite as well in tune. The filter is a little wobbly. It changes each time a note plays. The envelopes, the speed of them is inconsistent, and it just really makes it sound more vintage, makes it sound like an old school synth. And that's exactly why I wanted the Prophet 6 in the first place. But this new feature, I'm just in love with it. So I've been wanting to play with it, and I've got my chance through January. The opening music of this episode was playing around with that Prophet and its new features. And this next one I did yesterday on day 16 also plays around with that. But I wanted to have a little more fun with it. So I used my alarm clock, which has an AM radio on it. And I've only really kept this alarm clock around because it has this radio, and it gets some funny, like weird, spacey sounds when you play on the AM radio. So I'm just kind of going through that radio as I'm letting the track play. So I'm sort of playing like lead AM radio on this track. Now, again, I probably wouldn't do that if I felt like this track was super precious and it needs to be perfect and it's going out for whatever. This is an experiment, but I love what it did to the track. The fun thing about going through the AM radio, for instance, is you get those kind of weird, like sci-fi sounds when you get in between stations. It's mostly talk radio, so you don't get a lot of music, because sometimes that can interfere and clash with what you got. And sometimes you catch like funny little phrases people say. And in this take of my lead AM radio, I got some like funny things that were said in various talk radio things. There's mention of some current events, but there's also just, I don't even know what it is, but just fun phrases to hear. And then they stick out every once in a while in the music. So this one was made, this was last night for me, which was day 16. All right, another interesting experiment. Had a lot of fun making it as well. And it also still fits in this like psychedelic, my cassette tape boombox is being covered in molten lava. And I think it can all fit in the context of some bigger project, hopefully. We'll see. The next thing I wanted to point out, another experiment that, and again, I'm kind of doing this just to give you ideas, but also to reminisce myself. And P.S., that's one of the things I love about making music is listening back to it. You know, that next day car ride when you get to listen to the track you made the night before, to have that every single day is a lot of fun. And then after about 2 weeks or so to go and listen back to the whole collection, you'd be surprised at yourself and what you've gone through and what you've done and the ideas you have. And this is another example. On this one, I wanted to experiment with the whole tone scale. Now, I've never experimented with the whole tone scale. And this is a scale where every single note of the scale is one whole step away from it. So normally in major minor scales and more traditional sounding scales and modes, there's some half steps, some whole steps, but this is just like a almost, I guess, like mathematical scale. I'm not really sure of its origin. Maybe some of you that know more theory than me can clue me in on that, but it's a very weird sounding scale that when you play it almost doesn't sound like a scale. It's kind of strange, but I wanted to challenge myself to use it, so I took my push 2 and set it to scale mode whole tone. I found some chords in there based on what I had and made some rhythms, and I also used some of my rhythm drums that I was making, that sample pack, and then I set some vocals up, and on the vocals, I put an auto-tune, really Waves tune. It's their version, Waves' version of auto-tune. And I set it to the whole tone scale because it's a super hard scale to sing in. For me, I've never tried to sing in it before, and it wasn't happening until I put the the auto-tune device on there. So it was a cool experiment, and what I learned about it is like it can be used for like a very eerie vibe of kind of unstable feeling, because even the root note in the whole scale almost doesn't feel like home, not the same way it does in a major or minor scale. So this can create a lot of uncertainty, and now I feel like the whole tone could be something I maybe throw in a song, maybe even just for a section, or if I'm trying to create music for film or for some kind of project that's not necessarily my own thing, this could be a really useful technique. I'm also experimenting with Ableton Live 11's hybrid reverb, and I'm running a bunch of things through the shimmer version of the hybrid reverb. I believe it was the shimmer. It might have been the Tides algorithm, but there's also a shimmer one. It was one of them, and I might have had more than one on it and been doing both for all I know. I'd have to look in the session. But in the very beginning, what you're actually hearing in this little swell is what happens when you press stop, and the reverb just kind of keeps building a little bit. Now, again, I'm also pretty violently compressing and distorting everything to give it that I'm on fire in the lava feeling. So it would also fit within this idea of my experiment. And here it is from day 11, a whole tone scale experiment. I really like that one. It's so funny to me that I've never tried to do anything with a whole tone scale before. I can remember learning that in guitar lessons as a kid and just being like, what the heck is this for? And never thinking about it again. But having the chance to throw a day away on it in January, look at that. I came up with something I liked. And some interesting sounds, I think, too, in the process. Those big bass sounds are part of my rhythm drum sample pack. I think those were synthesized tom drums that were just so low and ferocious. When I put them in there, they just, kind of supplied the bass and the thunder and made it sound end of the world. And speaking of that, one of the things I did for a few of these jams was to utilize these drums as I was making them, this rhythm drum sample pack. Took a little while to put together 1,155, drum samples. But as I was doing it, I also knew I had to make my jams, so I couldn't spend the entire day every day doing that. So I just took some of the things I had and used them in my project. And this next piece I'll share was day 11. And this has a bunch of those drums. And I believe I'm using a lot of the probability functions in Live 11 where you can take your MIDI notes and determine a probability that it will actually play. So I programmed some kind of weird beats and made everything have a different probability. And I think over time the probability increases. With the Prophet that you're hearing, this is the synthesizer. I'm experimenting again with that vintage mode. And I'm also just turning the distortion knob up slowly. So that's why the Prophet starts to sound like really intense towards the end. It's just a slow, gradual increase of the Prophet's distortion by hand. And it's got that vibe again that I'm going for, that psychedelic thing. And it could very well work in, I think, like a interlude type fashion, like maybe between songs on an album. Who knows? I like it. I think it's kind of interesting and cool and cinematic. So I do have an idea that I might try to work that in the future. So here it is, day 11. Another sort of end of the world type of sound. Had a lot of fun doing that one though. It was just, let's see what happens when I crank up this knob, and let's see if I can actually use these samples from my rhythm drums in a useful way. And I learned a lot about the probability functions in Live 11, which I am a huge fan of. I've been using that a lot actually in January. I've found that another nice trick, in doing these is to reuse the same sessions. So I did this last year in my Januaries. I did an ambient piece one night where I took 4 tracks in live and I recorded a pass of the OP1 in each track 4 times for 5 minutes. That was the session. And I was trying to make ambient, meditative, kind of go to sleep to music. And I did it one night. I enjoyed it, had a lot of fun. And I did it the next 3 nights in a row. And those nights became the basis of my last release, which is A Journey Inward, which was 5 tracks of these ambient, kind of relaxing music you can either use to meditate, do yoga, or just fall asleep to. It's meant to be just something to lull you into a, I guess, meditative, relaxed state. That was the process for those. So I decided to try that out a few times so far this month, where I would go back to maybe a project that I enjoyed that I made and then reuse the session. And this worked out for me on the 15th. So on day 15, I took a track I made on day 5. And this is like a rock and roll kind of vibe, like post-punk, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And I already had the drums set up. I already had guitar tracks and bass tracks ready to be recorded on using Amplitube. So everything was set up. I had vocals ready to go, and I just deleted everything out that was already in there, and I added new tracks. And what that did for me was allow me to just get my ideas down as fast as they came. So I already had my structure, right? I already knew what instruments I was going to use. And I was playing the guitar. No, I started with the bass, actually. After I did the drums, I started with the bass line. And next thing I know, I had like a vocal melody ready to go. So I really quickly just did a sketch on the vocal track and then added guitar and then refined the vocal a little bit. Again, I'm using this kind of blabbering technique, but I was able to come up with some lines that I like, some words, as well as kind of like choruses and stuff that I will refine and just tweak a little bit till I get the final thing next month. But I've got like pretty much the basis of a whole song here because I didn't have to worry about setting up new tracks, the loading plugins, setting up the sounds I want for each sound. It was already there. I already did it. So I just kind of maybe tweaked a thing or two here, but just jumped right in and threw things down. And it allowed me to work faster than I could think almost, so that I couldn't even get ready to be negative about myself, and I couldn't even allow the time for self-doubt to creep in. It was just move forward as fast as possible. So reusing the same sessions. This is the idea of using templates, really. But I just took the session I did on day 5, I think it was, and deleted everything out of it and started fresh. And this one wound up being called It Isn't Easy. And I think it's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite ones I did, actually, so far. I had a lot of fun that night. The thrill of coming up with an idea so fast was just the thing that pushed me through the whole process. And nothing got in the way because I was reusing that session. So that's something worth trying too, I think. These are all just ideas, things I'm throwing out there. For one, to share my music with the world, just so people can hear it, but to share the ideas as well, so then hoping that it might inspire you a little bit. One of the things that is so nice about January is the community around it. If you share your stuff, especially on Instagram with the hashtag 2021, there's a lot of people posting in January. Last night, I think it said that particular hashtag had over like 12 or 13,000 posts. So you can kind of search through it, see what other people are doing if you need some motivation. I've found people are doing that. I've made new followers and gotten comments from people that I don't think were following me or knew of me before that. So that's pretty cool. And it's a nice way to just interact. People are like really excited to talk about what they're making. And that's a nice way to get people to listen to your stuff too, by commenting on their stuff. Eventually they might check out what you're up to. The Discord in my music production club has been super active. So much going on in that thread for January 2021. It's hard to keep up with. It's almost more than I can keep track of. I'm trying to listen to every single thing and comment. There's so much inspiration going on in there. And there have been a few nights where I didn't think I was going to be able to actually do January. And I went in the Discord and I saw everyone was going, and I got inspired and pushed through it. And next thing I know, walked away with something that I kind of liked. So I can't say it enough. It's such a great exercise to do. There's so much you can learn. There's so much growth that can happen. It's not easy. It's hard, but it's not impossible, and it's not as hard as you think it is. You just got to start. That's the thing. And don't feel bad if you haven't started yet. It's not too late to get going and get in on the action. So what? You didn't do the whole month. If you miss a day, who cares? Just start again. That's not the point. The point isn't to win January. The point is to just build this habit and experience the joy and fun of making music without so much of the pressure of always having it needing to be important and artistic and whatever. Who cares about any of that stuff? Everything I played for you today is a work in progress. Some of it a little further along than others, and I'm sure the sound of a lot of it might be offensive to a lot of people listening here. I didn't follow the rules, and it was fun breaking the rules. It was fun just saying, oh, who cares that my master's hitting, peak all the time, and whatever. It doesn't matter. I can fix that later. The point is to get the ideas down and to get that discipline of coming up with ideas all the time. You can get all critical and edit things later once you actually have something. But if you don't have anything, there's nothing to be critical over. So don't worry about it. And I really do encourage you to try to do it and see if you can pump out some jams, get involved in the community. A community is so good at motivation. It just gets you wanting to be part of it, and it makes you realize it's not impossible. Other people are doing it, and you can do it too. You just got to do it. That's the only thing. It's the only difference. So I think I'll leave it there, because if I keep talking, I'll never get my jam done today. And I'm kind of excited about doing one today because I've had so much fun the last few days, and talking about it has made me feel good about doing it again. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show. This is episode 199. We've been going for a while. Very psyched about that, and the feedback has been great from everyone. Thanks for anyone that sent an email or left a review. It means the world to me. I really do appreciate that. And I hope that this helps you in some way of getting going, making some music. If it does, when you post on January, tag me, Brian Funk Music, pretty much everywhere. So just let me know, because I'll listen and I'll check it out and I'll share it, and I'll love the fact that you made something new for this world. You added some good to the world through your creativity. Thanks again. Have a great day. I'm going to leave you with the first jam of my January, which was a little guitar playing, because I just got Amplitude 5 recently, and I wanted to fool around with it because it's awesome. So I'll leave you with that. Have a wonderful day.